Delivering pizzas on a Friday night seemed easy enough when I started working at Mike's Pizza. But after what happened last weekend, I'm not so sure. I got this delivery order around 9 p.m. The address was out of town, way down some country road. It was the last delivery for the night, so I thought, why not? Plus, it was a big order, so the tip would be good. As I drove down the road, things started getting weird. The GPS signal was spotty, and the place was in a dark, remote area. No streetlights or houses, just trees and fields. I felt uneasy, but I kept driving. I finally reached this old farmhouse. It looked abandoned, with broken windows and peeling paint. There was a car in the driveway, so I figured someone had to be there. I grabbed the pizzas and walked up to the porch. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. I knocked again, louder this time. Finally, a guy opened the door, just a crack. He looked kind of rough, like he hadn't slept in days. He said to come inside and set the pizzas on a table in the kitchen. Every instinct told me not to go in, but the tip was supposed to be huge. So I stepped inside. The house was dimly lit, and it smelled musty. I made my way to the kitchen, feeling more and more nervous. In the kitchen, I saw stacks of pizza boxes on the table, way more than anyone would need. Something about it felt off, like I was in some kind of trap. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me, and I froze. The guy from the door was there, staring at me with this creepy grin. I tried to make small talk, asking if he was having a party or something, but he didn't answer. He just watched me, like he was waiting for something. Then I heard another noise, a phone ringing from another room. The guy turned and walked away, saying he'd be right back. I took the chance to leave, setting the pizzas down and heading for the door. Just as I reached the porch, I heard him yell something, like he was calling for someone. That's when I noticed movement in the shadows outside, another person heading towards the house. Panic set in. I bolted for my car, jumping in and locking the doors. I started the engine and tore out of there, not caring if I lost the tip. As I sped down the road, I glanced back to see two figures watching me from the driveway. When I got back to the pizza shop, I told my boss what happened. He looked worried and said he'd heard rumors about some people living in the woods causing trouble. Now, I always check the delivery addresses before I go out, and I never deliver to remote places alone. That night taught me to trust my gut and not let a tip be more important than my safety. I was working a late shift at a pizza place, running deliveries in a neighborhood that always gave me the creeps. It wasn't the worst part of town, but there was just something off about it. Around 10 p.m., I got an order for a house on the outskirts of the neighborhood. When I pulled up to the address, I felt uneasy right away. The house looked run down, with overgrown weeds and no lights inside. I double-checked the address, thinking maybe I got the wrong place. The address on the slip matched, so I grabbed the pizza and walked up to the porch. The wood creaked under my feet as I knocked on the door. I waited, but there was no answer. I knocked again, louder this time. I heard some shuffling inside, so I knew someone was there. Finally, a rough-looking guy opened the door and stared at me suspiciously. I told him the total and handed him the pizza, hoping to get out of there fast. But then I heard it, a faint voice from inside the house, like a kid calling for help. My heart skipped a beat. The guy must have heard it too, because he glanced over his shoulder nervously, then tried to shoo me away, claiming there was a mix-up and the pizza wasn't theirs. I apologized and quickly walked back to my car, but I couldn't just leave without knowing what was going on. I decided to check things out a little more. I quietly walked around the side of the house, careful to stay out of sight. Peeking through one of the windows, I saw a small, dimly lit room. In the corner, I noticed a kid tied to a chair, looking scared and exhausted. My heart was racing, and I knew I couldn't leave the kid there. I went back to my car, pretending to leave, but instead, I called the police from a safe distance. I explained what I had seen and how something felt wrong. They assured me they were on their way. I waited anxiously until I saw the police cars pull up. They questioned me quickly and then approached the house. The guy inside tried to deny them entry, but they pushed past him and went in. A few minutes later, they came out with a kid who looked relieved to be free. It turned out he had been missing for a couple of days, snatched from a nearby park. The police thanked me for calling it in, and the kid's parents showed up, hugging him tightly. I felt a mix of shock and relief. It was a crazy situation, and I was glad I had trusted my gut and checked things out. I later found out I had been given the wrong address for the pizza delivery, but it ended up saving a kid's life. I stopped delivering pizzas in that area after that. It felt surreal, but I was just glad that the boy was safe. One night when I was delivering pizzas, I got an order for an address I didn't recognize. The GPS led me to an old, creepy house on the edge of town. It looked abandoned with boarded up windows, overgrown weeds, and peeling paint. I figured it was a mistake, but the app showed me this was the right place. I parked and grabbed the pizza, feeling uneasy as I walked up to the front door. There were no cars, no lights inside, and everything was eerily quiet. I knocked on the door anyway, thinking maybe I'd gotten the wrong address. There was no answer, and I was about to leave when I heard a faint noise from inside, like someone moving around. I knocked again, louder this time. The door creaked open slightly, as if it wasn't locked. I hesitated, but stepped inside, calling out to see if anyone was there. The place was a mess, with dust everywhere, and it smelled musty. As I walked further, I heard the floorboards creaking above me. My heart started pounding, but I kept going, looking for any sign of life. Then I noticed something strange on a dusty table in the corner of the room, a stack of old newspapers. The headlines caught my eye, talking about a local man who had gone missing years ago. Next to the newspapers was a faded photograph of the man, looking just as he did when he disappeared. Feeling more anxious, I continued exploring the house, following the noises upstairs. I found a door slightly ajar at the top of the stairs. As I pushed it open, I saw a makeshift living space with old furniture and personal belongings scattered around. That's when I noticed a closet door slightly open. My instincts were screaming to leave, but something compelled me to look inside. I opened the door and found a skeleton dressed in old, tattered clothes. The sight was horrifying, but what struck me even more was a note clutched in the skeleton's hand. The note was faded and barely legible, but it seemed like a message from the missing man, pleading for someone to find him. It mentioned that he had been trapped in this house for years and wanted to be found so his family could finally know what happened to him. I stumbled back, shocked and scared. I knew I had to call the police, so I rushed back outside and dialed 911. They arrived quickly and began investigating. It turned out the man had been hiding there for years, living in fear of being found by someone he was running from. The police used the clues from the house to piece together a story. The discovery helped solve a decades-old mystery in the town, giving the man's family some closure. I couldn't believe that my own delivery had led to such a revelation. From that night on, I always felt a chill when I thought about that house, knowing it had held a secret for so long.